Dive into this special episode from the Idea Citizen Summit, How We Work and Where We Work, powered by Cohesion Smart Building Technology. Learn more at cohesionib.com.
I'm so excited for this conversation. I got to take a look at both of your companies, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun today.
Great. Excited.
So, Thru, where are you located?
Currently, I'm sitting in Columbus, Ohio, but I live in Chicago, and we are headquartered out of Chicago.
Oh, dope. Are you a native, or are you a transplant?
Well, I was born in New York, but I spent my entire life in Chicago and the suburbs around there. So I consider native, although sometimes I think I'm a New Yorker at heart.
Chicago's one of my favorite cities. Eric, where are you based?
I'm located in the great metropolitan area of Cheyenne, Wyoming, the capital of the least populated state in the country, so about 2 hours north of Denver. But I also spent a lot in my prior career. I worked for Apple, and I lived in San Francisco, LA, New York, Chicago. So all those have like a little piece of my heart hidden around areas. But if all out of the four, New York definitely takes the cream for me. New York is my second home for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everybody, we're so excited that you're here and you're able to join us for today's conversation. My name is Evante Daniels. I'm the CSO at Seeqer. Almost said CEO, and that's a completely different job title. Through much respect to you for having that one. I work at the intersection of culture, leadership, and perception, helping organizations understand how meaning moves through systems, especially as we're talking about new technology, which is exactly what we're going to get into today. Today's session is Trends and Innovation, Cutting Through the Hype. It's part of a bigger series exploring human-centered leadership in an ever-changing world. So today's conversation fits right into what we love to talk about, leadership. How can we approach the situations that are coming at hand? And I have two amazing panelists who are joining me for today's conversation. So first I have is Eric E.T. Trowbridge, who is the Director of Digital Solutions at Blue Federal Credit Union and a member of the Artificial Intelligence Committee at the National Governors Association. He brings a dual perspective, how AI is influencing workforce policies and how organizations can ensure digital transformation actually benefits employees. We also have Thru Shivakumar, who is the CEO and founder of Cohesion, a smart building software company focused on how technology and physical space shape the way we work. Over the past 7 years, she's guided her team through the shift to hybrid work and helped clients across industries create workplaces that balance flexibility, structure, and community. Thru, E.T., thank you so much for joining us today. But I wanted to make sure I got those bios right because you've both done some amazing work in this space. And I know listeners are going to get a lot from today's conversation. I'm going to throw out this initial statistic to start our conversation going. 58% of employees are now using AI-driven tools in their daily workflows. We've officially crossed the threshold that 49% is huge. These workers are now being interrupted nearly every 3 minutes because of the tools that they are using and the current workflows that exist. And it takes them an average of 23 minutes to fully regain focus after each one of these interruptions. So while we're seeing it enhance efficiency, we're also seeing the exact same tool cause attention breaking and disrupt deep work if it's not integrated thoughtfully. E.T., I'm starting with you. How do you keep up with what's transformational and what's just noise?
All right, heavy hitter right out of the gate.
Oh yeah, I'm coming for it.
I mean, I think, and of course, all of my opinions and stuff that I've learned from, being on the National Governors Association and the state of Wyoming's Workforce Council Board, where I'm the chairman, are all my own, because if anyone tells you they know exactly where AI is going, and, oh, this is totally where we're going to be in 3 or 5 years, no one does. We're all working on it, and this is the fastest evolution change I think we've ever seen in human history. I've said before, truly based on what I'm seeing, we haven't seen something like what's happening right now since probably the Industrial Revolution about 100 freaking years ago, which totally changed the way that we manufacture things, how we work. And some examples of that would be like, I think there's 3 large technology changes that have happened in our lifetimes, which is kind of rare. The first one was where no science fiction novel ever knew about it or never predicted it. Like we should have flying cars right now, like the Jetsons and all that stuff. But the first big revolution was the internet. And so when you think about the internet, it was kind of created 60s, 70s, but it really didn't catch on mainstream until about the 90s. If we all remember AOL and the 56K modems and but we finally got internet. The second big transformation was now that we had these big computers on our desk, they magically over the course of a decade transformed into this. now all of a sudden we didn't really necessarily need these big machines. We had them in our pockets, and now that's how we run the world. AI is now kind of in that same situation where it is now evolving in such a fast way. And like to your point, Evante, the adoption rate, I learned at the NGA conference in DC in March, the average person, if you've never done AI before, you're just like learning about ChatGPT or your Copilot or whatever you're using, for any adult human that's not tech savvy, that's just starting out with AI, takes only about 10 hours to actually start getting to know how it works, how AI prompting works. But to your point, now over 50% of the workforce in 1 or 2 years is now using AI in some capacity. This is unheard of. And so we really are, I think, in a very exciting and kind of an evolution that we haven't seen as a human race at this point. So I think it's really, everyone just needs to embrace it. It's here. It's not going anywhere. AI is not a fad. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's this thing for 1 or 2 years. Like people will use it and it'll go away. It's here. And so we have to learn as humans, how we adapt to how we make our human centric, like soft skills better versus like having to do a lot of the hard skills that AI is really good at. So I think it's all about embracing it, and it's still not perfect to your point, Evante, the amount of notifications and stuff. But I think even in just a couple of years, we're going to see AI help out with that. I mean, even one of the most recent announcements that's got my attention pretty closely is the acquisition that OpenAI just announced with Johnny Ive's company. And Johnny Ive is that famous, probably one of the world's, if not the most famous industrial designer in the world, designed the Mac, designed the iPod, worked for Apple. So we're going to see some really amazing AI hardware coming out that's really going to revolutionize how we interface with AI. Like AI does not need this thing in a screen. It needs other things. And so I'm just really excited to see where AI goes and how as humanity we adapt to it.
Wow, what an answer. Such a phenomenal answer. You gave me back just as much as I asked from you, and I should have expected that. There's so many things to touch on there, right? When we talk about the future of AI hardware, how this change has happened so rapidly in just a few years to now being the majority of the workforce. Thru, you really got to experience this, transitioning your company to hybrid work and starting a business, and the last years have been for you. How has this journey been from before AI really came onto the scene as it is now? And like, what are you struggling with today between judging what's actually helpful for your teams and your company and what's just noise?
So it's a great question. I think that I think just expectations of each other, like within my workplace, within my team, is that we should be working faster and doing more because we have AI and tooling around that to take away some of the mundane tasks. Like I always tell my team, that you don't really need to start from a blank template anymore. You have the ability to start with a template. You should never just use AI, like don't cut and paste anything and just use that as a whole. I think you should absolutely learn how to prompt, how to use it, how to leverage it, but where you can add sentiment in, where you need to start to put feeling and emotion and have that human-centric piece of strategy, I guess, within the AI space. So I think that we're still, as Eric mentioned, we're very much at the beginning of how all of this is going to transform us. I think people are still skeptical from a trust perspective. I think that trust factor is going to change. I've been on panels before where people will raise their hand and say, well, how can you trust AI? I'm like, well, how do you trust humans? Like, I mean, there's errors everywhere we go, right? Like, I actually trust the computer more than I trust the human in doing like a calculation. So things like that, where I've seen a lot of pushing my team to really think outside of the box, like leveraging more tools with AI. Like we shouldn't have an answer of, oh, I couldn't get to that because I've got all these, like, it's going to take me time to like set this up. So I'm like, go build an agent, or find an agency that can build an agent to help you through some of these mundane tasks. That's not what should be taking the time anymore. So I think that really thinking outside of the box, thinking about how things that we never thought we could solve for are here, and we really need to be strategizing more of how we can use AI. So for what's changed in my team in general and the company is that we can do a lot more. We expect each other to do a lot more, and we expect that the mundane shouldn't be done by us. We should really be elevating our thoughts, our actions, all of that should be elevated to a very different level.
Absolutely. I mean, I use AI in a lot of my own work, and especially when we're doing deep research. But what do you think about this side of the interactions and the interruptions that is also happening? That while this great work is happening so quickly, that also leads to a level where people are getting quickly disrupted, and it takes them close to 23 minutes to get back on task again. Are you seeing any of those challenges as a leader, Thru?
Very much so. I've heard a lot of, in the last 3 months, more so than ever, I've heard the complaint of context switching. Like the team can't get back into where they were before, so that they've had to constantly context switch. So that's part of that disruption, the interruption. It's interesting because I had read somewhere that the attention, like a human attention span, has gone from, in the last 2 decades, it's gone from 12 seconds down to 8.25 seconds. That's like how long somebody's attention span is. And for Gen Z, it's less than 8 seconds because they've grown up with the constant interruption. But what this leads to is like this era of like instant gratification. We now have to shape expectations for this, for rapid decision making, for rapid moments, like what we call micro moments. It's those type of events are happening much faster. And I don't think that, I think that we're all learning how to respond to that. So you asked me a question of like, how am I seeing this change? I don't have the answers. It's more of like, I think more so than ever, what we have to do is define like the list making is getting more and more important. Like I have to get this done at this time and deliver, as to setting expectations. So I think more so than ever, it's setting expectations more frequently and saying, I need to get this done. Right. And I need it by this time. So that expectation setting, I'm doing a lot more even with my team. And that I've noticed is helping the team stay on task and make them, inclusive of myself. Like I have task lists. I've tried to use every single digital tool on a task list, but I'm still using pen and paper.
I was about to say that's mine. I have used every single tool that gets advertised to me. I'm a sucker for a free trial, and every single time I come back to my sketchbook,
Exactly.
it's just what holds. But ET, I want your thoughts on that. And really, from this technical place, especially as we're talking about distraction, right? And like this blessing and curse situation where it's both this thing that lets you get a lot of work done very quickly, but it also opens you up to all of the distractions the internet has to offer, right? How are you seeing ways for leaders to use AI and to look at AI more as an enabler than a disruptor, especially when it comes to where it's headed, how quickly it's growing? And if you could do any more of those amazing sound effects, I would actually be extremely grateful.
Gosh, sorry. I've got plenty of sound effects. My team knows that. It's true. I think kind of to my earlier point is we're in such a nuanced phase of AI where the reason why we're having all of this kind of like, whoa, notifications here and everywhere is that the hardware has not yet caught up to the brain of AI. That's what we're going to see a major transfer. So the big problem of like AI transitioning, humans don't have span, that is kind of, I think, is part of our natural, friction we're going to have for a couple of years. In the future, 3 or 5 years from now as hardware, because right now we're basically just like taking what we currently have and we're just slapping AI in it, and it's not making it any better, right? It's making it even more busy and more distracting. So that's, I think, the purpose behind, Johnny Ive and OpenAI coming together, is realizing that the hardware needs to entirely be rethought of. Just kind of like how we went from the PC, the personal computer, your desk, to mobile, we are going to see a new evolution of AI agents and AI hardware that's actually going to be embedded in so many things. But we don't need screens. Like we won't need to see a screen. Like I could imagine a day in the future, 3 to 5 years from now, where I can say, hey, can you design a great day for me? My goals for today, I need to get X, Y, like you'll just talk to it, whether it's embedded in your glasses or it's something that you're wearing. The AI will do that for you. Like you won't really look at your calendar, like, can you move that meeting to Thursday? Can you put that on my priority list of 4? But here are the things, whatever you name your AI, I want you to help me design a great day. That's the long-term like solution, right? The short-term solution is like, it'll slowly get better, but like to your point through, yeah, I read another study too, where, our company sometimes struggles with like just how the amount of meetings. I'm sure everyone deals with that. It's like meetings. Some days I just feel like I get up at 8, I sit in front of my computer and all the way till 5. And then there's just all this context switching, right? To the human mind about 10 minutes, like, whoa. Because like when you first join a meeting back to back, you're still kind of in a way processing the former meeting and you're like, whoa, who's this? And what is that about? So with AI is going to help all humanity to kind of better manage their time, set their priorities, all that kind of stuff will all be done for us. And so, it's really going to be about, we as a human race have been so used to being machines, like, oh, I need to create my to-do list. I need to go send out a calendar invite. Even in the workforce, I need to go work on a production line to build a car engine. That's not going to be the case anymore. Now we have these robots and like humanoid robots and AI that does it wicked well. It runs 24/7, 365, 7 days a week. Doesn't need weekends. It's like, it'll be there doing all of that stuff for you. All of your AI agents will be doing all that for you. So in a way, it's kind of cool if we embrace AI, we actually get to get back to humanity. Like, oh, I'm a human. There are unique qualities about humans. We can think, we can reason, we have emotions, critical thinking. We need to learn how to speak better and to write better. And like through what you were mentioning, I can definitely see people that do AI prompting and they take that 80% of how AI has gotten them there and they're like, oh, here you go. Like, that's kind of like novice AI usage. To your point, like AI as of today, it'll get you 80% of the way there, but that's where the humanity piece currently comes in, is looking at that and adding your own like institutional expertise into it to really make it great and stand out. So I think that we're just kind of in a natural friction moment because hardware has not yet caught up with the AI brain and engines, and we'll see that kind of disappear over the next couple of 3 years. And then eventually we'll start to learn what it means to be a human again. And I think we're going to see the quality of our lives and our work lives and our personal lives just exponentially get better as these AIs are able to help us on the tasks that no one wants to do anymore. Like, honestly, who wants to go be in a production line for 10 hours a day? Who wants to be an assistant and look at Excel spreadsheets and try to calculate numbers and reports? No one does. Especially the Gen Zers will not want to do that. You could pay them gobbles of money, but they're like, no thanks. It does not sound like it's an enjoyable life thing.
I'm clearly not a Gen Z. I get excited by doing Excel models.
Oh yeah, but they won't. Yeah, it's like, it kind of feels nice. Like, oh, I actually get to go. One of my side hobbies from like all this AI computer stuff is like, I just build little hobby kits. So I buy these little kits and I glue and I build like little furniture. For me, it's like, I just like doing that stuff. But of course, the computer could do it. But yep, strange. We're in a very unique time for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's half of this future that goes exactly to what someone in the comments just said of, can AI just take over our jobs so we can sit back on the beach? I mean, there's definitely going to be a luxury engineering space here, right, of being able to handle some of these tasks and take them forward. One of the things I just wrote a piece about this yesterday about how we use Claude and ChatGPT at Seeqer. And a lot of our work we do orally. We talk, we have conversations, and we have these pieces. And instead of going through typing and having someone like even sit down to manually type something out for my own writing, it's easier for me to orate a book or talk through a whole article and work through that piece, and then use Claude as a way to make that more accessible for somebody who prefers to have it read to them. And so there's a way where AI can really serve in this powerful space of translating for accessibility for our organizations, where yes, we get to remove the mundane. And if you want to make that really sexy looking Excel spreadsheet, I say go for it, but the part that you don't want to do, maybe that's the PRD that's attached to, or the email that goes out with it. If it's something that you can just say, or if that comes to mind, or there's an easier way for you to speak or you to communicate that, and AI can work as a translator on your behalf, then we can actually remove a lot of communication problems and culture issues that exist within organizations that really, stem from alignment issues.
Agreed.
So as we talk about this, there's a lot of this is where things could go. We're really at this teetering point in the world. So as you're looking at this, how do you work to balance innovation with stability? I would imagine for someone in your position, you're trying to look for the tools that are going to best help your organization, your team, potential clients or partners, but you don't want to recommend every single thing that pops up. Like, what are we on, our fifth version of ChatGPT in 5 years? At a certain point, you want to stay informed, but the bleeding edge does have a cut to it.
I think you have to start with the goals and the kind of requirements. Being a product innovation company, we talk about user stories and user journey. I think really getting to that requirement section is so important to say, what am I trying to accomplish? And then how am I going to use these tools to get there? The tools shouldn't inform the requirement. And I think a lot of people will talk a lot about like, oh, I need this hardware, especially in the real estate space. We're not like that ready for AI. Like, you're still using plastic key cards in 90% of getting into buildings. So we're far from where the physical office and or physical spaces in general can go. So like, great for flying cars and Jetsons and where we're going, but we are so far behind because we don't even have the foundation built when it comes to like spaces and places. But I think honestly, I just think that we have to start with, what am I trying to accomplish? I did this with a client today that they were talking about devices inside of conference rooms. And I said, okay, step back. What do those devices, what are they supposed to actually achieve? What are we trying to get them to do? And let's start with form and function before we get into what technology, what vendor, what company. Let's start with why we're doing it. And it was a simple thing of understanding, here's the user journey and here's how people interact with their space. But then I brought it back to, well, what's the data that has to come out of that so that it can inform future decision making, right? And so whenever I talk about data too, I talk a lot about, what are we trying to answer? What do you do with that? What do you do with that analytic? What can you change? What decision can you make with that kind of information? I hear a lot of people talk about data and analytics and data, because that's, obviously where everyone is focusing. But data for the sake of data is not really worth it until you figure out what decision can be made and or influenced.
Yeah, I really love what you said, that the tool shouldn't inform the requirement. There are so many shiny new cars right now that are coming out, and everything says powered by AI. And frankly, that phrase makes me want to like run my head through a wall. But for a lot of people, I've seen that it's actually very convincing. And so as they're looking at this stuff, everything seems shiny, right? And, there's a huge difference between fool's gold and actual gold. But when you're trying to make that decision from a landing page or a sales call or something like that, I'm sure that it can be really overwhelming. And so being able to drive that part to exactly what are we trying to serve here, regardless, forget about the technology for just a second and think about what we need to do, and then finding the tool that serves that requirement. We got a question in from the chat. How do we upskill our teams that bring a lot of value in the office to continue their contributions to the office with the advance of technology? Who wants to take this one off the top? This is a really good question.
I can add a quick 2 cents how my team is quickly adapting to it. So, I have about 6 or 7 developers at Blue Federal Credit Union. We've been watching the AI stuff closely. One of the hardest things that I've found for companies adopting AI successfully, and there's a bunch of these AI advisors that I've seen in different conferences, and the thing that stood out to me the most was the companies that have most successfully adopted AI and making things better for their employees and for their business outcomes, instead of just trying to do everything all at once. Because obviously AI is like, whoa, the hardest question is, where do you start? We could do sales, we could do marketing, we can do this, is pick 1 to 3 domains and go very deep with those 1 to 3 domains. So for example, like what we're doing at Blue is we're focusing on our member experience and our employee experience. So we're just going to take those 2 domains. There's all kinds of other AI applications we can have, and we're going to go deep. As we're going deeper, they said the other thing that is checking at the moment is getting that buy-in from team members to use it and understand how to use it. And so the company that we partnered with is kind of our enterprise AI application partner, is we're slowly rolling it out and giving our employees access to this new new tool. They're going through small certifications and like learning tutorials. And I think we've got about 10 or 13 agents already built out there, and they're helping my developers in, looking at API code and, how to connect here, and, looking at our sprint tasks and are we on time and what are we trying to achieve. So I think it's really about not going too big, but start small and slowly grow it and get the buy-in, and then making sure that they're getting time to actually play around and use it for the problems that they're trying to solve. Like what Thru said earlier, is you have to have a goal. So in all of my new employee one-on-ones, I'm starting to kind of talk more about what parts of your job could be enhanced and how do we get you there. Like, do you really need to do this? I need you actually more over here. I need you more of your solutions architect brain or your front-end developer side of things. So it's about embracing it and not doing it too quickly, too soon, because then people will just kind of get shock and awe. And like, so I'm taking it very slow, but then I'm starting to see the positive results of it, kind of like, oh, so-and-so has that access. Can I get access to that? I kind of want that organic little fire to start. So I'm just there to kind of be like, just starting little fires in different teams. Like one gets it there, then before they know it, they're talking about it and they're like, oh, I want to try that. So the buy-in for me is a really big focus, and I'm starting to see just natural organic results from it.
I think, Eric, you made a really good point in terms of like starting slow. What we have done is we actually host, knowledge share sessions with each other to say, hey, did you know that you could use this to do this? We had our tech leader hosted an AI workshop inside the company and talked about, like, let's think outside of the box and how can you make those mundane tasks of your job automated, right? How can you leverage AI to do better? What are the pain points that constantly come up? Like, what are the repeat pain points that you're seeing? Because that's a great application of where AI can help, is the repeat issues. Like, you can actually start to think about that. And so I do think, because we're so early, the upskilling is going to come from each other, right, on the teams, especially in innovative teams in general. But I think it's having more conversations. I think it's putting out feelers and talking about, has anyone done this before? There's a lot of people selling agents and building custom agents right now, talking to them to see what kind of ideas, because there's a lot of different agent types and approaches to how people are thinking through problems. So I think it's encouraging the conversation.
I think so. And I just actually, you brought up a good, you and I are kind of on the same page with it, because I'm trying to get them excited when they build an agent. They're like, because they do get excited. They come to me, they're like, oh, I can do this for me. Like it's cut down my time here. And so I was like, how cool would it be, like, probably not this year, but next year, like we're going to kind of create, as it kind of grows, just kind of like an app store award type thing, like who can build the most efficient, and they'll showcase it to the company and just get people like, oh, that is how AI is applicable to my job or their job. You start seeing how it connects, and like we kind of give little recognition and some different awards, like you built Blue's best AI agent in 2025. Like being able to build that culture and encourage that kind of culture, I think, is how you're going to see that natural like excitement and productivity. People are going to get excited to start learning how to build these things and make their companies more profitable and more enjoyable.
So Eric, tell us when you launch that AI hackathon and best practices, please.
Yes, I will. Yeah, and if you do it before I do, I'll ask the same from you.
Sounds good. Byron, if you're listening on my team, go for it.
So I have a question for both of you. When was the time, as we're seeing AI roll out of these last couple of years, or really last 3 years that have been really impactful of it coming to market, when did your team or you decide to bring this in as a tool for the workplace?
We started probably in the last, I want to say really using it in the last 6 months. We were exploring it. We were thinking about it. We've been doing a lot of research, but really in our day to day, and now like minute by minute, not just day to day, it's like minute by minute use of AI really started, I think, in heavy use about 6 months ago.
So through with that, before we get to you, just real quick, AT, I have a question here. What was that initial exploration, or like getting this onboarding to an existing organization, right? Because I'm sure there are a lot of listeners who are thinking like, great, yes, I want to bring this tool to life, but what is it like for this isn't just, switching from Microsoft Word to Google Docs, right? What was that like?
I think it's really the leaders embracing that there's going to be some change and encouraging people to explore. I think that was the biggest thing. I think the first time we really started to push it was that I asked our product and tech leaders to host a session that said, here's how I use AI, here are the cool things that you can do, and then encouraged kind of that share across. And I do think that there are just as many people who are excited about AI. There's just as many people that are skeptical and or scared or nervous. The not fast to adopt people, right, are nervous about it. And so it can be intimidating. And so I think taking away some of that intimidation factor is about having the conversation. It's about demystifying what that looks like. We did it with some of our investors and our board, and we said, hey, while you're a little bit older than us, we will host a session of what you can do. And we did like real life scenarios that weren't work related on how they could do that. Like one was like, here, I can write a speech. I can have a prompted speech written for me for my friend's wedding. And they were like, whoa, like even just as kind of like, let's make it relatable, I think is really what changed it for us was like, I asked our team to host something internally. And then we shared that out because I was talking to my board members and said, hey, we did this internally. And that was like 6 or 7 months ago, maybe even a year now at this point. Time flies. But they're like, we would love that too. Like, can you do that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know from my side, one of the things that's been really exciting to work with people on is that imagining, like you're saying, and then sharing those ideas. Like we use it in a very specific way. We're culture nerds. We're asking questions around media analysis and sentiment and all these other stuff. And then I talk to an engineer and it's a completely different way of using the exact same system. And I always walk away learning so much. ET, what was it like for you guys? How did y'all come to this system and what was that process like?
Long, and it's still ongoing, so I mean, which I think I want to, that's normal. This is a big change, and regardless if you're a small company or a large company, it's scary. It's like, how does this work? I started pushing my first kind of aha moment with AI is I got early access to the very first version of Dolly from ChatGPT. It was that first like generative AI image, and I remember getting the email one night saying I had access. I was like, oh my gosh. I went in there, and for me, I can literally type in anything and it just creates this image. And I mean, I only had a certain amount of credits. So I was like, okay, I'll do this image and that image. I knew the world was going to change in that moment. I started working with Blue and just trying to get them into AI space about a year and a half ago. And so I feel like every single time I walk into the executive room, they're like, oh God, ET's here to talk about AI again. I was like, yeah, please, look at this. So we actually only just kind of officially onboarded our vendor to kind of get this AI stuff getting through. It was in March, so we're through your 6 months in. I'd probably say we're 3-ish months in. We actually have the tools now. Now we're kind of learning it. The other big one for me, which is going to be a constant thing, is now that we have the tool and VPs and directors and executives are starting to play around with it, is that buy-in, and making sure you have a nice spectrum of like, my information security officer, Cheryl, I think she said she was going to be on this call. Like, love Cheryl to death. Cheryl, fair out there. I love you. And, just walking through like, how do we create a general use AI policy for our company? Do we allow employees to use ChatGPT or do we lock it down to Copilot? And I for a long time, I felt like we were so far behind. As an FI, we've got so much PII, right? Like when you have people's money, like Blue, we're almost the stewards of $3 billion worth of people's money. So it's like we triple check everything before we start feeding anything into that. So I've realized how important it is to ensure that our IT team feels comfortable with the API connections, that information security is reviewing the data, and that the permissions are set there, and what AIs can talk to each other and which ones can't, because you don't want to create one AI to rule them all in your company. That one, you get the key to that room and it has everything. No, that's the whole point of creating very specific AIs to kind of containerize them. So then it's compromised, you're not getting access to everything. The buy-in and the explanation is really, really important. And then like, I realized after going to all these AI conferences, I was like, okay, we're actually farther ahead than I thought, than a lot of companies were. And the number one thing was getting your company to at least start considering, if not already, a data governance. You've got to get people together to start talking about data governance, and even an AI data governance. Where does this data live? Who has access to that data? What's in that data? That's even just a really good starting point to start bringing those key stakeholders together to feel good and look at how we want to implement it across multiple perspectives.
It sounds like for both of you that while you've been personally invested in AI and like really looking at this tool on a personal level for maybe even the last couple of years, as an organization, it's really been the last 3 months, the last 6 months that you've really come to a place where there's enough credibility, there's enough trust, there's enough infrastructure to even begin to broach this conversation, which I think is honestly really relieving for a lot of leaders out there, right? Because we've been talking about AI for years. And like, I know even with my own, I'm like, oh my gosh, how else should I be using it? How are other people not, how are people using it that I'm not? What's the biggest concern that's coming out there? And I know a huge weight came off on both my shoulders hearing you say we've just really getting started into this and we're really figuring out those initial steps.
Yeah, I think like, as long as you are doing something in the, I think that's kind of my theme is like, I've constantly feel like I'm behind. I mean, like obviously like every 10 seconds there's a new AI post on LinkedIn. Look at this innovation. Look what Anthropic is doing. Look what ChatGPT is doing. Look at this merger happening over here. They're building $1 trillion data center over here to power AI. Oh, we need the energy. We're investing in nuclear energy. We're looking at fusion energy. I'm just like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I just felt like, oh my gosh, we're like a tortoise. We're like slowly, but I was like, I think the takeaway for me is as long as the company and or you are using it and you're trying to learn it and figuring it all out, you are already way ahead of everyone else. The people that I do worry about are the people that are pushing back, and going back to my personal opinion that this is as large, if not larger than the Industrial Revolution, and not to be like a scary tactic, but I kind of see AI as this like tsunami coming in. It is coming and it's kind of already starting to come in. And those folks, at first I wanted to kind of help them, but they've kind of have now built sandcastles on the beach with the tsunami warning going off. And I just like, I don't know how to say, like, you've got to get ready for what this is going to mean for humanity and our jobs. And, so even just tinkering around with it, creating some fun images, creating Simpsons stuff and trying to take one little tiny piece of your job and converting it to AI, you're already ahead of the game. And, just stay on top of it because it's impossible for any one of us to stay on what's going on in the AI world at the moment. And it's exciting, and I feel like AI at the end of the day is like yin yang. It could be great, but also it can be not good to you. So it depends on which side of the yin yang you poke into.
Thru, what were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say I completely agree on Eric's comments. It's not just coming, it's here. Like people who are scared of it and or resisting it, those are the people that are behind. And I think that the people that are kind of fear-mongering or, saying that they're scared because they think that their job will be replaced by AI, it will be if that's all you do, right? If your entire job is something that a computer can do faster, it can be. So you got to figure out what value, right, that you can add on top of that. Like where is that emotional? Where is that experience level? Where is the strategy, right? That's stuff that you still have that you bring to the table. But mundane tasks that you're scared that you're going to lose your job, the reality is that you probably are, because it's going to be cheaper to do it on a computer than doing some of the things. I think that like I'm excited for real estate as a whole. Like, this is obviously where my head's at, but real estate running faster, plastic key cards, obviously a gripe of mine. But how come we still have most of the work tickets that come in are I'm too hot or too cold? Why can you control a house, but you can't control anything else, right? Or your car? Why, things like that, where we talk about that. We talk about comfort, we talk about experience, but the spaces and places that we go to haven't adopted any of that. And so we're still in the physical built world. We're still in the foundational side of AI, which is creating the groundwork, getting the data, cleaning and structuring the data so that we can apply AI to that eventually.
Yeah, I was listening to something on the BBC yesterday that spoke that we are at a $64 trillion infrastructure alignment that needs to really happen by 2050. And a lot of the questions are about how fast are we doing things via AI to having to adjust systems that may not have been updated up till recently. Not to cause a whole spiral in the last 10 minutes of this conversation, but just to throw that out there as something to consider. And I think really what I want the listeners, if you're listening to this right now, I want you to take away from this is that you have time. that yes, there is a shift happening, and it's a very big shift. This is changing the way that we look at business and industry as a whole around the globe. We could not probably anticipate a bigger shift happening in our current lifetimes, especially for the ramifications this is going to bring. All of that said, we're just at the beginning. And so if you're nervous about getting started here, if you're nervous about getting into it, this is a great time to download one of those tools or open it as a tab on your computer and just have some fun with it. It doesn't have to be serious. It could be a story that you're going to tell your kids tonight, or it could be a recipe that you're trying to make for the weekend, or heaven forbid, it's the email that you really don't want to write. You know, you can use any of those pieces. But what I'm hearing from Thru, from ET, and even from my own experience is that as a leader, it's the best thing you can do to allow us to help you as a leader and to help you be able to shape your company is to start exploring and start having fun. Thru, ET, thank you so much for this conversation today.
Thank you, Evante, for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so happy that we got to do this.